Well, hi, welcome to this episode of Prophecy for the Last Hour. My name is Liz McGee, and I'm going to do a sharing teaching. Today, I got a couple things on my heart that I want to impart. That rhymes. You didn't try to do that on purpose. I want to talk tonight about the writings and the house of Judah and the two seed lines and the Talmud and Kabbalah and just a whole bunch of stuff, because there is, again, I don't look for trouble. I'm just doing my thing, doing research, and I feel like I need to impart, because I believe, the Dead Sea is dead because it only has an inlet. It doesn't have an outlet. So as the Ruach, as I get understanding, I put it out there so that I can receive new understanding. It's a river, it's a flow, it's got to keep moving. But sometimes I think that we do ourselves in the elect, the house of Ephraim that is coming back into our Judaic, Hebraic understanding, a lot of disservice, because we, in my opinion, say things before their time, and that can cause a lot of problems. But anyways, I wanted to talk about, because I don't think that you can figure out the whole storyline of the 6,000 years, what happened in the garden, what is soon to be coming upon us at the end of this age, this aeon, this period of time in which the God of this world has been allowed to be, the Kromokratar, the ruler, and that's soon coming to an end. But the word seed is a real important word. And so serpent seed, the two seed lines, if you don't understand, in my opinion, you don't have the deeper understanding of this, the Bible is just not going to make sense. And, then you're going to have this Yahweh who is, racist and genocidal. And it goes, and there's tons of people out there on YouTube and Facebook I see make these comments that have no real clue of who Yahweh Elohim is, because they just don't. They're not putting the blame in the right place. But in 1 Enoch, in chapter 22:7, there's a really interesting verse. And this is sort of what really started tipping me off to the two seed. I kept seeing the word seed. And then I got a handle on what seed meant. It means offspring. It absolutely, when it's used paired up with people, your seed, her seed, Eve's seed, we're talking about people, okay? We're not talking about plants. We're not in the mineral kingdom. We're not in the animal kingdom. We're in the, humankind kingdom. So when it's used, it absolutely always refers to literal descendants, offspring. Women have children. That is your seed. That is the seed. So in Enoch, there's a verse that says, that is the spirit, in chapter 22, verse 7. It says, that is the spirit that proceeded from Abel, and it laments on his account. It talked about how Abel's blood was lamenting, like Yahweh could hear the blood lamenting for what had just happened to him, because his brother Cain had just murdered him and shed his blood, the first murder in the first family, right out the get-go. So it says that is the spirit that proceeded from Abel, and it laments on his account. It laments on his account till his seed, so we got to follow the pronouns, his seed, meaning Cain's seed, be destroyed from the face of the earth, and his seed, Cain's seed, disappear from among the seed of men. So this is beginning to tip you off that there are two seed lines, okay? And this is what we are really talking. There's two sets of offspring that have generated in all the earth. Now we have just a total, and this is a lot of what total mixed bag of genetics of peoples all over the earth. You do have some very pure streams on either side, some just by chance, some by very knowledgeable and understanding groups of people. But again, in Enoch chapter 46, verses 4-8, it talks about the kings of the earth. Now, and it says that there will be no hope of rising of these kings rising from their couches. Now, I think I did a teaching one time, one of my shows, about the word couches, because it's really misleading. It's one of those, like, they're couches, like you're thinking of your living room couch, and it has nothing to do with that at all. It's the word like a flower bed. So in other words, you plant seed in the ground, but you know, a lot of times a master gardener will plant different beds. You know, that's the rose bed over there, and that's the perennial bed, and then we've got, you know, even trees and flowering fruits, and there are certain sections. These are all known as flower or, you know, agricultural beds. Okay, well, again, always understand the Hebrews were, and the way their idiomatic language flowed, it always flowed from a natural understanding that you get the natural. So you plant seeds in the ground, and you usually organize them according to flower beds, or, you know, even he said not mixing. And we talked a lot about, Jeremiah talks about in the field, when you're out there, you don't mix, you know, the barley and the lentils and the cumin and these. Everything has its own place to be planted and to grow. And this is where Yeshua is talking about the end of the age. The wheat and the tares are just growing together, and it's a mess. Okay? And it's get to the point you have to wait until the end, till the time of full fruit, in order to begin to even get a handle on who is who. And this is the problem, because we all look humanoid, so to speak. But it's only when you see the fruit, which represents the actions or an outward manifestation that, you know, is unmistakable, that you can usually determine what that particular seed has been growing. So there's many levels of seed, and there's many levels of this understanding. But the point I want to make, first of all, is it's really important, I think, is Edomites, again, coming into our Hebraic understanding, they always use the natural to teach deeper spiritual truths, okay? And they don't mix, they're not confused, okay? So this idea of the kings, and this is the beginning of the wicked. A lot of time Enoch was always talking about the wicked and the righteous. And there is a certain reward for the righteous, and there's a certain punishment, and there's a certain end for the wicked. And this theme is all through the Bible, okay? Now, in the earlier, and this is what we're beginning to understand, in the earlier ages, they were close to the source. This understanding was much more front and center and played out in very obvious ways. Okay, so if you have giant and you have Nephilim and you have hybrids, it's pretty easy to see that the seed is being tampered with, that there are really crazy things going on. We have been living the last 3,000 years in a much quieter, subtle time frame. So it makes the earlier ages, the pre-Diluvian and right after it, the first, like, about up until the time of Abraham, it can't have happened. I mean, that's just such crazy talk, but we just really need to understand. And I think this is what a lot of people are beginning to understand, that, you know, as I've always said, we're not in Houston, we're not in Kansas. We've never been in Kansas. So getting back to this seed, as for Ezra, he's very clear about this evil seed. There is an evil seed line that is corrupt and wicked, and will have to be rooted out of the earth until we can have a peaceable kingdom. So that is pretty much, and there's tons of idioms that talk about this, like Abraham's seed. I've said this before, is known idiomatically in Hebrew as Yah's seed. Abraham, those are the children, and through Isaac especially, the children of the promise. So there's tons of verses. Jeremiah 31 talks about seed. Leviticus talks about, in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 6, 19 through 20. Romans 2, 17 through 18. So on and on, where this concept of the two seed lines. But this is really in the book of Revelation, let me just say, this is where, at the end of the age, where the seed line, it's going to become very evident again, like in the beginning. You know, at the end from the beginning, there's nothing new under the sun. What's been growing in terms of is going to become very evident, either very wicked or very righteous. But it talks in Revelation, let me just say this, let's see, where was I? Revelation 10, Revelation 9, 21. And again, it talks about the wicked. This is the context, is the wicked, is they will not repent. Okay? He's been extending grace for 6,000 years. Anyone can come out of their wicked heritage, their wicked ways, their wicked mind, and their wicked, and repent and receive grace and receive salvation. Okay? It's always been that way. There's many stories of people who have, gone over to the other side, both ways, righteous becoming wicked and wicked becoming righteous, okay? Because with God, all things are possible. With Yahweh, all things are possible. But anyways, the real wicked will not repent of their murders, their magic arts, and their sexual immorality. Now, this is key. And let me just read it again, basically the same thing with even a little more flushed out of it in Revelation 21. Let's see, I think we're in verse 8. But again, talking the same thing, the wicked, who are the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars. They will take their place in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. Okay, in the second death. This is going to happen. But again, this type of behavior, I want to say, we really need to unpack a little bit more, because and understand when you have an infestation of wicked. I mean, look at this is really in our government today. That's what we're understanding is we have an infestation of wicked that, it's getting, and it's getting rid of this. It's going to be a God-sized job, but I don't want to even go down that road per se. I want to say, but a couple of the key words, cowardly are, they will not fight the good fight. Okay. They will be lazy. They will be, laissez-faire. They will let, it says that, when good men do nothing, wickedness triumphs. Okay. So if you are not fighting the good fight, if you're just being lazy, if you're more concerned with the affairs of this world, if you are unbelieving, I mean, that's pretty, if you do not have a believing heart in a creator father, obvious ones, your vile is very unclean, loathsome. He talks about those who are just absolutely loathsomely, abhorrently unclean, constantly breaking all Torah, all the Torah prohibitions against whatever it is, thievery, lying, sexual acts, magic. It's just totally unclean. And those who practice magic arts. Okay. Now, Israel, I have to just tell you, the house of Judah, they never had a problem understanding that this was an absolute forbidden boundary line. You do not practice divination, and you can get into, I'm not going to get all the different lists of different kinds of practicing the magic arts, okay? But I will come back to that. There's idolaters and liars, murderers. I mean, Cain was the first murder. So there is definite fruit. Whenever you see this, I mean, this is what we're seeing today with a murderous pedophile, practicing magic arts, spirit cooking. We have a real infestation of very wicked people in the very highest levels of our government today. Now, that's not my opinion. That's a lot of people's opinion. And there's just tons of evidence, and we do have a problem. But let me get back to this. Where the seed, and we also live in a culture where people there's no concept left anymore, because, truly we're at the end of the age, and the best, I mean, we get a little of this in the Gospels, where Yeshua talks about how it would be. But actually in 2nd Ezra, there's, and I forget what chapter, 2 chapters of just listing the behavior at the end of the age, where there's such a breakdown, such a total disregard for the law and boundaries. It's just a rampant lawlessness, okay, which we're seeing today. But this whole thing about we don't have any more pride in our hair, like okay, so I call this race baiting, or this is the big propaganda today. It has so many forms, whether it's race baiting, fear mongering, book baiting. I mean, where you're just in class and you're in a propaganda war, and that you're under a siege from the wicked, when broad brush sweeping generalizations become more true than actual factual based research and examination, okay, where you can, but where people have no more pride in their heritage, no more pride in family lineage, like, well, let me give you an example. Okay, so Jonathan Edwards. This, I don't know, I got this from okay, it was a comparison someone did. It's on the internet. You could probably find it. Jonathan Edwards, born 1703, a great revivalist, one of the greatest revivalists that we've known in our nation. He was a man of God and married to a woman of like character. Okay, so they were equally yoked. They were Torah-keeping, righteous people. He was 24, she was 17. On their wedding night, they committed their marriage to the Lord. Now, this is what can come out of a righteous seed line that is dedicated to the Lord, living Torah principle and passing it on and understanding. See, I guess this is what we've understand what it is to pass on a righteous heritage. So out of his seed line, through I think the next 200 years, you have 300 clergymen, some missionaries, theological professors, 100 professors, 100 attorneys, 30 judges, 1 dean of a law school, 60 physicians, 1 dean of a medical school, 3 mayors of large cities, 60 authors of fine classics, 14 presidents of universities, 3 state governors, 1 controller of the U.S. Treasury, and 1 vice president of the USA. I mean, that is a seed line that really contributed to the building of our nation. And, I'm not going to... Okay, but contrasting this with a Max Jukes, who was born in 1700, okay? And in his family line, there were 310 professional vagrants. 440 wrecked their lives through debauchery, sexual immorality, to put it in more modern. 130 went to jail, 7 for murder, and the average sentence lasted 13 years. More than 600 became alcoholics, 60 were habitual thieves, 190 became prostitutes, 20 became tradesmen, 10 of whom learned their trade in prison. And it says their descendancy cost the state of New York $1,250,000. Yeah, $1,250,000. And see, I mean, it's just, I know people are like, I know that you can feel where it's to even put forward righteousness as a standard is laughed and poo-pooed today, okay? Because, hey, everybody's the same, and we don't want to discriminate. Oh my gosh. Anyways, it's really important. Okay, so let me go on to this whole point, again, because when you don't really have a concept and a belief that the wicked are among you, and this was our nation, we were founded on Torah laws, Torah principles, we really kept the wicked under a tight leash. Everybody looks at New England. I live in New England, and they look at the little New England towns and the way they operate. Oh, so puritanical, and those people were so uptight and everything. Oh my gosh, see, this is revisionist history. These people understood. If you don't keep the wicked on a very tight leash, they will absolutely blow you over and down. Okay, this is a fact. This is the way they operate. So yes, having very clear moral and ethical rules on the books of who can run for office, okay? So that you don't get up, because and this is what we have today, where people think your character doesn't count. Your character, you can still be a great lawmaker and be a real pedophile and have a history of sexual immorality and all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't work that way. See, this is the mind disconnect we have, but I don't want to get into that. So what you have here, when you have this kind of mentality, like especially of race baiting, of fear mongering, so that you classify the wicked hide. Let me put it this way. The wicked like to hide in large, broad statements, okay? So that all priests are pedophiles. Because we know we had a problem with, 1 to 2% that went unreported for quite a while, okay? I'm going to give away why I'm doing a little bit of the show, because of some, in a little bit of a reaction to some of my favorite people on the planet, another channel. All rabbis and Talmudists are pedophiles, and the Talmud promotes and accepts pedophilia. Oh my gosh, all whites are secret racists. I mean, that's just the way, that's the big one today, that all white people are really secret racists. Only blacks are true Hebrew Israelites, and all white people are Edomites. I mean, all Japanese are really secret spy collaborators, so we got to put them in, you know, in special camps, and all Muslims we know are terrorists. I mean, so the people that are the problem people can hide under these huge flag waving broad brush strokes. And if you, and part of the problem too is because the way Yahweh works with judgments, if you don't police your own, okay, which is the way it's always supposed to be, every group is completely responsible, so to speak, for police, like as a parent, my husband and I are completely responsible for our children. If our children go out and start robbing banks, you don't think it's going to reflection on us? Okay, the buck stops with you, and usually it's with the leaders and the elders of the different groups. So if you don't police your own people, not like even, you will have it come back on you as a judgment. So so that being said, but okay, so there's another teaching out there going around in YouTube, and you know, by my wonderful friends at Now You See TV. And I mean, I'm not looking for trouble, but I listen to some of this stuff, and I'm going, how can you, excuse me, paint with such a broad brush? You're not doing anybody any favor, and it absolutely is race baiting, book baiting. Okay, and let me give you some examples. So that all, you know, again, this is the thing, that all Talmudists, or that the Talmud and the Zohar are all evil. And they all come absolutely from dark occultic black magic sources. I mean, nothing could be further for the truth. Nothing. And so, again, the enemy can hide and carry on in such a broad statement and never, okay, and the righteous. All right, let me just flesh this out a little bit more. But how about this one? Let me put it this way, because this is a journey I was on. I'm sure a lot of my listeners, this is a journey you've been on, that I say book baiting. So, you know, when you were a good evangelical or whatever, and you had your canon, and that's where you stayed in the box. You do not read those extra biblical books. They were all bad. I mean, basically, you know, you were told that extra biblical books are all unscriptural. They're all suspect, and they're all full of deception, and really trust the people who made the canon, because, you know, of course, they know the best. So when you finally got brave enough to get out of the box and start reading these books, you realize, oh my gosh, who made up that lie? And this is one of the revolutions today, that people are reading all the extra biblical books, and they're realizing that this is where the meat of the word is. This is where we're finally getting some answers and some ability to put the whole story back together again, to get back to some of the truth, that the doctrines of demons that have absolutely crept in and all this stuff. So it is very true. And the only way you're going to dispel that lie is by actually reading the text for yourself. See, this thing, if you rely on other people to tell you how to think, you know, you're going to fall into the same judgment that they are going to receive. If you will just do your own research, do your own homework, be your own thinker, trust the spirit that's in you. I always say that I believe that the Ruach that's in me is greater than the enemy that is outside to deceive me. You know, that Yah's ability to keep me is greater than the devil's ability to deceive me. But this is really important, because when you start throwing out whole bodies of Hebraic work that is authenticated, genuine, has a true track record and a history, and you allow people to take out of context because they're allowed to do whole little sections that are so like, oh my gosh, if that's true, then we absolutely have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? And don't do your own research. Well, you might as well just sign up for the enemy's latest program, because you just did it. You just did it. So let me go back into this again. Okay, so the Talmud. Now, let me just start with this, okay? Because I think that this is the problem. Because actually, I grow daily in my, like, oh my gosh, I know nothing. I'm just an Ephraimite. What do I know? I have not been Torah trained. I don't know Hebrew. I don't know. I mean, I'll admit, all I have is an insatiable zealousness to draw closer to Yahweh Elohim and to understand everything that's available to me, okay? Which is a lot at this point, and that I'm not denegating the role of the Ruach in our ability to lead us into all truth, okay? But You have to be kind of smart about this. One of the things is in the house of Judah, I don't think that Ephraimites, we truly understand what we're dealing with. Let's go back to let's start at the beginning with the two houses. Again, so you understand the two seed lines. To me, and this seed line is, while there is a genetic component, because we're made up of body, soul, and spirit, there is a deception that goes on in the mind. There's a deception that goes on in the soul. There's a deception that finally comes out in your actions. Okay, so this is why it's not so explicitly, while it is in some places very explicitly stated. Sometimes it's referred to with what is called a remez, or a hint, like I just showed you from Enoch, that his seed will be destroyed from among the seed of men, okay? Sometimes it's very cloaked in allegorical language, but this is how the Hebrews have purposely, the scribes, layered their scriptural understandings, okay? Anyways, we have the two houses. If you don't understand the two houses, you're again out totally in left field. The house of Judah and the house of Israel are alive and well in the earth today, but we don't understand, I think, the house of Ephraim, and this is where it becomes anti-Semitic, when you truly do not understand who you're dealing with, okay? In the Jerusalem Targums, it's really spelled out a lot more how the birthrights went down, okay? Because Jacob, and I've done teachings on this. Listen to the teachings on the two houses of Israel, and how the birthright that was given to Abraham, the birthright blessing, was split into two camps, two houses, two nations, and in the earth today are really kind of being worked out, through two different kind of groups on the planet today. Basically, you have Christianity and Judaism are really two sides of the same coin. One is the older brother and the other is the prodigal that's coming home. I mean, it's really not, once you begin to understand it, it's very simple and it's not rocket science and it's all over your Bible and it will make everything make sense. But the house of Judah, we know, was always given the scepter, that the king would come through their house, their loins, their seed, their lineages, their king. This is when Yeshua came. This has been proven through the genealogy. This is understood when he comes again as Messiah. And I've done teachings on this, the Messiah ben Joseph, Messiah ben David, the priestly Messiah. These are really deep understandings that need to be understood, that go along with this whole package. But I don't think we've understood the scribal birthright that was given to Judah. Okay, so it says here in the Palestinian Targum, when Jacob is distributing the blessings to the boys, and he says to Judah, "King shall not cease, nor rulers from the house of Judah, nor Sepharim, teaching the law from his seed, till the time that the king, the Mashiach, shall come, the youngest of his sons, and on account of him shall the peoples flow together. How beauteous is the king, the Messiah, who will arise from the house of Judah." See, we have no problem understanding that, the future king will come out of Judah, okay? And Messiah ben David, which is the scepter, which is the king. And there's a whole bunch that goes with that. There's a lot of history. Won't go into that. But it's the seraphim, the scribes. There should be scribal teaching the law. See, Israel never lost. No. Let me get this straight, because you got Israel as the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, basically Christianity today. You got Jews over there. Judah, Jew relates to Judah, who part of their birthright was that they would never, Judah is the only tribal group, because Benjamin and Judah, I won't give you too much history, kind of this little group in the southern kingdom stayed together. They have prevailed over their brothers as the only tribe maintaining their tribal name. So in all the earth, when people talk about Jews, you're really talking about Judah, okay, the southern kingdom. They have, and it was prophetic, Yah had his hand in it, and they have done it to the end of the age. They have maintained a tribal name. They're Jews. They're house of Judah. They're Judites, okay? And that they will be the scribes that maintain the Hebrew scriptures. See, this is the thing, and this is why the writings are so broad, and this is, I think, what the Ephraim we need to understand a little bit better. The house of Judah had the covenantal responsibility to keep the writings in the house. So when we go back to understand our Hebrew roots or whatever, we don't go study Buddhism, we don't go study Hinduism, while there are truths, there's definite things going on that we can relate to in these different places. We're going back to the house of Judah. They kept the writings, okay? But the writings are so much bigger. And this is with the extra biblical books, so big even that when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, it was like amped up even more, okay? But this is, let me find a little note here, so like I said, that Judah would retain their tribal name, what they did, one of the main things that they did to do, that they stayed being Sabbath keepers. But, and that is what kept a blessing on them and kept them unified and kept them, because it was a ritual thing that kept them centered around, a repeatable ritual that was going on and on and on. I mean, this was all kind of really in Yah's wisdom to help this happen. But Job says that a lawgiver, because it says this in Genesis 49:10, that a lawgiver or a scribe or judge will not cease to be in the house of Judah. See, so all right, so when you get to the time of Yeshua, and he's always kind of, you got the scribes and the Pharisees there, you have your Sadducees, you have your Essenes, you have your different groups there, all more, some way less, some way more, keeping this covenantal scribal tradition alive, okay? But the problem with the Pharisees to say is, seriously, this is your professional priesthood. These are the ones who just kind of made it a ritualized religion, and Yeshua did have a lot of problems with them in the sense because they maintained the Sabbath. I guess people don't understand how they went into exile for 70 years because of not keeping the Sabbath and the Jubilees. When they did come back, they kind of went overboard on how to lock down the Sabbath keeping because they didn't want to go back into dispersion or into exile again. So they kind of overdid a lot of the rituals, the rules, the laws on how to practice this Judaism Sabbath keeping religion. Okay, and they left off keeping the weightier matters that there was their gift to the world of justice and of mercy and of the higher wisdom and of the secret knowledge. Okay, so this is a little bit of the thing, but the Essenes, and this is why you need to understand all these groups, the Essenes were on the opposite end, where they were keeping it all, even a more ancient strain. So when people today talk about Enochian literature, or that they are following more Enochian way, meaning Moses is the lawgiver to Judah. Basically, Jews today, I mean, they're not really majoring in the epochs before Abraham. Okay, that is the reigning time of the patriarch Enoch and his writings. Okay, so this is why why when you get into the Dead Sea Scrolls, and where it's so important that Yeshua wasn't a Essene, and this is all very proven when you understand a Essene lifestyle, and then you read the book of Acts, and you just kind of put it all together. But he was the earlier writings that we found unequivocally in the Dead Sea Scrolls are much more Enochian in their origin, their flavor, and their on the timeline. So this is where you have found in there the book of Enoch, book of Jubilees, the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, which is unbelievable. People should read this. I mean, I really believe, especially again for moral and ethical insights, reading the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs. There was found the Psalm scroll, extra Psalms that we didn't even know existed. Okay, they kept much more extra feast that we didn't even know. Okay, much had been falling on the wayside. Okay, it's not a perfect story, but at least they're ending up at the finish line. The Temple Scroll, which many people believe, and it can be highly documented, really is the original book of Deuteronomy. Okay, and then you have the Genesis Apocryphon. You have so many works in the Dead Sea Scroll that absolutely are purer, older, and document the epoch and the importance of the Enochian understanding. And it isn't that they're different. See, this is when people say, oh, Enoch and Moshe, they're not, they're all following from the same stream. These are all guys that are coming down the pike from the same Yahweh Elohim who is doing his march through history. Okay, so you can't separate them. It isn't like that, but you just need to understand. So the importance. And so when you get to the writings in the house of Judah, not only you have, I look at it this way, you have the totally great, the exoteric. This is what you get from reading Second Ezra and understanding the exoteric and the esoteric way they have preserved the literature. Now, this is a fact. I've done tons of teachings on it, the concept of the oral Torah. But, you know, the priesthood, the Melchizedek priesthood that went up through until the Levitical priesthood, and then Yeshua picking up the thread again, understanding these things are not the scope of today. But these things can all be kind of put back together and understood in a time frame as we're making this march through history. But the Talmud, this is the thing that you cannot say, oh my gosh, well, let's go back to the public. There are writings that are public. There are writings that are called exoteric. There are writings there for everyone. And this is basically your Old Testament, your Septuagint, and your Masoretic texts. This is the body of the Tanakh, the Old Testament. Then you have your esoteric understandings. You have your oral Torah. You have the writings that are apocryphal, that are giving the hidden wisdom, that need the keys to the kingdom. This is what the scribes, this is what, in essence, this is what Moshe with the 70 elders, this is the concept, to sit in Moshe's seat. One of the main things that needs to be understood is oral, and I have a teaching on this. You really should, and the more I read and stuff, I can see this. It's like now that I understand it and I see it everywhere, and I get it. The great emphasis that the ancients placed on oral tradition and it's flip-flopped. They considered the brain to be an unbelievable tool for retention. And this is where they had unbelievable retimaries or systems, not only of logic, but of retention, so that from a master to a disciple, truth was transmitted orally and in your face and in ways that helped you to remember it, because they considered an oral understanding of a higher cognitive and reliable witness. Now that's a fact. So we should stop, and that the written text was always less reliable and less emphasized. Okay, and this is why they had an order of priests, and this was their job, to retain it, to teach it to their children, who taught it to their children, who taught it to their children, to the point where, let me read a couple little quick quotes here on this, but see, and this is where you get into the concept of the Kabbalah, because this is an orally, to a large extent, it was part of the orally transmitted understanding. Now, I know that people who, you get your mind made up about something and you don't hear. It's called the dialogue of the deaf, so I can give you all sorts of facts. I can try to explain to you, lay it out, show you the verses that allude to and all this stuff. But this is where we need to love truth more than our concept, our box, okay? But although mostly unknown, the Torah has been handed down in an unbroken tradition from master to disciple. This is what was going on. This is why I gotta just read it. This is the true meaning of the very word Kabbalah, received transmission. This tradition comes from a methodology that is almost unknown outside of a number of small fraternities of Torah scholars. Without applying this methodology, it is impossible to understand what the intent of the Torah really is. And without this tradition, which requires a long process, here's this word, initiation. And that word, if you just take it at its, which is all over our patriarchal literature, just means someone who is truly started and goes forward like a sage of studying out all the writings. Okay, you start in kindergarten, and hopefully, you know, after 30 years, you have mastered great bodies of understanding and work, and you have. Now, let me give you this as another way. The deeper teachings, which is what Yeshua refers to as the keys to the kingdom. I have been through all this, is conveyed, which is truths that are conveyed in a concealed mode via paradoxes, via allegories, whatever. And these teachings are done deliberately, a lot of this stuff. And this explains a lot of why the Essenes, they had such a lockdown system on a lot of this knowledge and understanding, because they did not ever want it to become accessible to those of bad character, because they understood the wicked, and they understood how the wicked will use, you know, Yah's knowledge, not only in Yah's face, but against his people. But it becomes a concealed mode of transmission, and due to the value, these teachings are not accessible to those of bad character, those who don't prove themselves, who are not worthy. This is why there's writings for the worthy and the unworthy. It doesn't mean the good, you know, like good or bad. It just means you're worthy or worthy. Are you going to do the necessary? Well, let me see. Because this information, their transmission, their depth, it cannot be given to those who are not schooled in the ways of analysis. This mode of transmission was nevertheless based on consistent rules and principles, such as those equipped with the keys, which would unlock their meaning. To others, they would appear non-rational or fantastical. See, this is this is what Ephraimite Christians today coming into don't understand. We don't really yet, because most of us don't know Hebrew. We don't have any idea of the depth and the deep of the Hebrew language as text, as voice, and as number. There's three, you know, and this is part of the whole, and I can't go into these deep teachings right now, but I will continue to do. We don't understand it, so that a lot of these references that are made in certain verses, we blow them off. And we don't have the respect necessary. And I was talking about the scribal arts, these people, oh my gosh, there's like 1%, it's 1 to 3% of error in all texts, really, in the Judaic world of texts all over the world. We know this from the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, it's a phenomenal system. But so we have to be a little more, we just can't start reading a couple of texts or reading what other people say about these texts and think we're some kind of expert, and we can just start broad brush, you know, book baiting and saying all Talmud and Kabbalah is evil and of the devil. And now we just, you know, you're going to be responsible for that. You just have to, you're not a good researcher at this point, in my opinion, because you don't really understand the little portion of the wicked when it comes to the Kabbalah, the history, and really what happened and what is going on. And I know that for a fact, but let me get back to this. This whole thing, okay, so the Talmud, so these, I mean, I think John Ponders is a wonderful man of God. I mean, he obviously loves Lord, and like, but but I tend to disagree that your research, you are just not, your depth, your breadth, the width of your understanding is not deep enough and mature enough. I'm sorry to be making these broad brush statements. To get, all right, so we'll flush it out. So this whole thing of that, the Talmud, we got to throw the Talmud out because they condone pedophile, you know. And, you know, you go to websites, you Google that, and you'll get a couple of places, all over the place where people will go in and they'll take that concept and they'll give you a little quote, and then they'll just run with it. And the anti-Semiticness of the thing just goes from 1 to 10 in a heartbeat, okay? But let's talk about this. See, we don't understand how Judah, this scribal, they became scribes, they became scholars, sages, prophets, priests. There's so many levels, Levites. There's so many levels of this and ways in which they worked out this scribal, keeping the scribal tradition or the writings alive. But the Talmud is basically writings from this side of Yeshua. So, 200, 300, they kind of codified the group because they had lost the temple. I mean, truly, this is where they were forced to give up a lot of their style of transmission, master to disciple, and to start writing stuff down. And it was much to their chagrin. They didn't, but they felt it was necessary. They had real boundaries around it, what you could write, what you couldn't write. But something people didn't understand about rabbis and the Jews. I have a friend who told me this. He said, because we just don't have the respect for Torah. We do not have anywhere near, we think we do, the respect for Torah that a Torah observant, righteous Jew does. He said from childhood, it is drilled into us that it's the Torah, the Torah, the Torah. You study Torah, you think Torah, you meditate Torah, you do Torah, you're righteous because of your Torah keeping. Okay, but so now, because we think, oh, we did away with the law and we're saved by grace, and oh man, we just can be, and yet here we are, some of the most unholy people on the planet. And oh, it's just so funny, but I can't go into all that stuff. But the rabbis did have a lot of time on their hands. I mean, you could say, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 years to kind of flush this out. See, to be a judge, they were the ecclesiastical last say in the society, okay? And this is still even today. They would live under the laws of in exile of the nation, but they would also, within their communities, the rabbis and sages had stale sat in Moshe's seat, which means when Moshe started the tradition with the 70 elders of being able to judge among the people. They would use the known Torah understanding along with all the hidden ramifications and understandings, and they were called upon to righteously judge and render decisions on the halakha, on the law of different situations. And that's what they've done. That's what they've been doing. I mean, well, we've been squandering our inheritance and living like Gentiles and completely clueless for thousands of years. They stayed in the house and they were still talking and haranguing and arguing and researching and thinking deeply and meditating really on the Torah, okay? So there is a huge body of work there. So the Talmud, this stuff is huge. There isn't one single, event or circumstances that could happen that you're not going to find a Jewish mind rabbi rendering a judgment on. I don't think there's anything, no stone unturned. But anyway, this whole thing, getting back to this, the pedophile thing, there are some very highly idiomatic 3 verses or 3 statements in the Talmud writings that talk about molesting. They say that it was okay to molest a child under 3 years of age. But see, this is where you just don't have any of the understanding of what's really going on. They made the rabbis in these instances, this is halakha renderings for women. It's in the context, halakha understandings for women who are virgins or non-virgins and relating to their dowries. Okay, now we know biblically women it was a very patriarchal society, and the wealth or the financial keeping of women was passed down father to husband to son. It was sort of kept in that lineage. But this is a concept that it has to do with the legal status of a Jewish virgin, and if she may marry a Kohanim or not? And is she virginal? See, okay, so how do I say this? For instance, a woman still has the halakha full status of virginity no matter what happened to her before age 3. So I mean, they have renderings. I mean, there's nothing that hasn't been. Therefore, any girl who converts to Judaism below the age of 3 has the legal status of a Jewish virgin and may marry a Kohanim, in Rabbi Shimon's opinion. The discussion here, it's strictly a halakha. It's like in a court of law, you'd be discussing different aspects of something, and you would be rendering a decision. The discussion here relates to the dowry for virgins and non-virgins. It has nothing to do with acts which are allowed, encouraged, forbidden, or discouraged. The Talmud relates that a virgin is entitled to a higher dowry. The claim that the Talmud, Judaism, okay, so this is what we're talking about, okay? So a lot of this, if you put it into its proper context, what I'm saying is, they're making a comparison to what wicked things could happen to young children, which even in there is child abuse, but is not necessarily impacting a girl's ability to be considered a virgin for her dowry. I mean, it's actually very complicated legal matters, and they just pull stuff out of context. They throw it out there because it idiomatically says that a girl, I don't know how it says that a molesting a child, whether above or above, it's forbidden. See, because we understand this, if you really understand your Torah, whether it's in the Talmud or the Mishnah or anywhere, there is nothing that makes sexual relations with a minor permissible. I mean, go into Exodus and Deuteronomy and read it. It's very clear. There's nothing unclear in any of the Hebraic writings where they would be, where you could find them truly making it permissible to have sexual immoral relations with children, with animals, with the opposite sex or the same sex. I mean, this is just kind of known. So to be taking these verses completely out of context, and when you do the research, which I call pop, just like pop Kabbalah, like pop book baiting. This is what the anti-Semitics want you to believe about the Talmud. And about the fear, oh my gosh, it's so evil. These people, these rabbis really do permit pedophile and sex and molesting girls under 3. And I'm like, see, this is what can make you, and you wonder why the 2 houses, we've had this problem all these centuries, okay? This is very bad research, okay? It doesn't help the cause. Let me go to another one, the whole thing. This is the other thing, like, call no man rabbi. So anybody, any Hebrew roots or anybody who's, especially those Jews, those legalistic Pharisaical Jews, that call each other rabbi. Oh my gosh, how evil, evil, evil. Look at what Yeshua said. Yeshua said, call no man rabbi and call no man father. Well, why don't you read the whole chapter? Why don't you get context? Okay? Instead of taking the little verse, this is verse baiting, okay? And just throwing out a verse out there and saying, look, Yeshua said it, Yeshua said it. Well, here's context, okay? So let's go over the context of that. Like we did the context of, 3-year-old pedophilia is being okay amongst Torah-keeping righteous Jews. Okay, anyways. This whole idea with the rabbi thing, okay? First of all, call no man rabbi. See, first of all, rabbi just means teacher. Okay, so first of all, so what I'm a teacher. I mean, you can't call me teacher. I mean, I can't even function. So if somebody wanted to call me a moreh, I think that's the Hebrew word for teacher or a rabbi, that's okay. See, what it is it's an issue of the heart. If you read about the rest of this whole chapter, Yeshua is taking umbrage again with the religionists, people who are in it for the show, for the money, for the prestige, for the power, for the manipulation, for all of the wrong reason, and he calls them out. If you read that whole chapter, he's saying, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, because first of all, you exalt yourself. You make yourselves out to be the some some spiritual, Joe's spiritual, and you don't even do what you preach to the rest of the crowd to do. He says, you are blind, keepers of the blind. You stay blind, okay? And you keep the blinders on those who follow you. You're blind leaders of the blind, and you keep it that way purposely. So he's going over, when actually what he is finding, he says, is the greatest among you should be servant of all. He's trying to teach them servant leadership. Just because you want to be called rabbi and get a great title and be, because truly great sages and rabbis and teachers in Israel, not like today in Western Protestantism, had great respect. I mean, these people were worthy of a double honor because of what they put in. They lived Torah, they preached Torah, they taught Torah, and it was appreciated amongst the people. But this is where in the Old Testament you would have had these people this is again sitting in Moshe's seat. These are the judges. These are people who are invested as scribes, priests, Levites, invested with the spiritual transmission of truth to those of their generation. Okay. In the New Testament, we have the fivefold gift ministries. So you're saying, and one of them is a teacher. So, apostles, prophets, pastors. So now we can't have teachers? No, that's not what it's saying. It says, don't let teachers or don't let anyone into this fivefold ministry who is a novice or is too young or has not proven themselves, because they will either get arrogant, or they will, because they're such a novice, they will be, Satan will be able to take them down. And this is the history of, we have so many stories of this. So truly, in its larger concept, Yeshua is not saying, if you read the whole chapter, don't call any man father. This is the other thing, because our fathers in the faith, and this is very proven Hebraically, our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These are our fathers in the faith. This is why we only have, yes, and they are archetypes in a lot of times their lives of our Father in heaven. Okay, so no, you don't lightly take on, doesn't mean you can't call a priest a father, but you don't follow newfangled, untrue, untested, unpatriarchal. Like our religion is very old. Okay, it's pre-Catholic. Okay, it's pre-Protestant. Okay, it's pre-Judaism actually. All right, in the sense, it's Enochian. It's old. Okay, and we have patriarchs that we can go back and look on and spend half your just trying to read their writings, Enoch and Abraham and Jacob and Isaac, in Moses. Okay, those are our fathers. Okay, and we don't need, so we have to be very careful. You don't let novices or the arrogant take these positions for the wrong reasons. Okay, now that's basically the whole point of that. Okay, so whatever. The last thing, there's two last points, because some of these great rabbis, see, when you say all Talmud and the Zohar, and I'm not going to pick on the Zohar, I have tons of teachings on this, and I'm going to upload more. But I mean, I've read the writings. Okay, I'm not a newbie. I'm not telling you something I haven't read. Okay, so for Pounders and Carrico to be telling you what's in the Zohar, and again, verse baiting, taking little sections or little things out and not having the true history, that's wrong. You can't do that, because you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is why Western Christianity is in the problem it is in. But some of the great rabbis, tell Rashi, everybody, the Tanakh, if you get any Tanakh, you're going to get your commentary from Rashi. I mean, he is a mountain. And again, these are mountains. These people, Hillel the Elder, Maimonides, okay, who wrote Guide to the Perplexed. See, even with people, when you start reading these people, anytime you start doing research, and you're going to run into their quotes and this kind of stuff. So what, you're going to throw them all out because you think they're all really condoning pedophile? I mean, come on, you put some brains on your head. That's what you got it for. Rabbi Akiya, Nachshemites, Judah the Prince, the Vilna Gaon, Moshe Cordovera. These are tried and true. And I'll tell you the other thing about house of the older brother, as Yeshua said in the parable, you know, why are you upset? Because I'm welcoming back, you know, your brother, my younger son, who once was lost but now is found. You have always been with me. True Torah keeping, observant Jews have always been with the Father. They don't need, quote unquote, to be born again. Okay, they are a Torah keeping Old Testament. They're good. Okay, now so many came and have come to Messiah ben Joseph because of the exiles in 70 AD, when all of Jerusalem, I mean, basically they just slaughtered them and they just exiled hundreds of thousands. And through the centuries, so many Jews lost again their identity. So if they're aren't you thankful that Messiah ben Joseph, that he came to seek and to save? So we always think of it in terms of the house of Ephraim, the lost sheep of the house of Ephraim. Well, there's plenty of lost sheep that are also of the house of Judah that through the dispersions, through the exiles, for whatever reason, lost their identity. Do you know how many Jews had to convert to quote unquote Christianity in the Middle Ages, and especially like in Spain and different places where they were, like Christopher Columbus, we know now was a Jew, okay, because of the persecution. So in perspective, when you have a holistic understanding, you can put things together and you don't need to verse bait. So people, sure, but have they all been perfect? No, of course. You get, you know, in the New Testament, we get a great example of a rabbi gone bad. I mean, Simon Magus, you know, who was dogging Peter and was doing great signs and great miracles and had great spiritual power. All basically as an occultist, as the dark side. This is the thing with Simon Magus, and you can track this through the literature. I don't have my references right here, but basically John the Baptist had a disciple who took his position when they beheaded him. So this was not like his chair, quote unquote, was not left vacant. It was filled, and it was filled a third time. Simon Magus was a highly initiated, or, you know, part of an Essene group who had all of this understanding and knowledge and wanted to be the high priest, and thought, again, here, arrogance, and he was denied it. And so he went to the dark side, you know, and had made an issue with Kepha and with this this understanding of Messiah ben Joseph. Okay, so you can see a personal, but you know, he also had, and this is, okay, and I'm not saying that there has been a history and individuals of very dark and unsavory character who have used the deep understandings that are couched in places like the Kabbalah, the Zohar, some of these things, because see what we're on, I don't want, and I've done teaching on this, so you got no secret. There is deep understanding, because there's no such thing as magic per se. It's just science, quote unquote, or it's just an understanding of our cosmos, that in the ways to manipulate the elements on levels that, I mean, it looks like magic to anybody else who's clueless. I mean, so, and this is how Simon Magus was deceiving whole cities, and they were worshiping him as a god, and that was nothing new. This is what, you know, Nimrod, this is what these people do. Okay, this is what the Watchers did. They use the knowledge of the terrestrials and of the other domains, and they use it to make themselves look so big and bad and godlike, and, you know, whatever, get the worship and all this stuff. So these are things that I think are just really important to understand and to get more of a handle, and not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay, we need elect today who will be fearless. And that's what I'm calling for, an army of people who will go into these writings, and I've made these up, that I am not saying, you know, again, this is where Christ, you don't understand who these scenes were as the keepers of the secret, as the true inheritors, genetic and otherwise, of the believing remnant in Israel at the time. Okay, these are not Luciferian sun worshipers. I've been over this. We're done with this. If now you see TV cannot get their research better. Okay, You know, and I don't know why I have to go back and just sort of even bring this all up again, but because it's important, because people, knowledge is power. We are in a propaganda war. We're at the end of the age. There's so much going on. If you know, if it's really true that that these hurricanes and the things that are the weather warfare, you know, is it global warming, or truly is it Luciferian wicked who are banding together, who are manipulating our planet at a level that it just, Yahweh's just going to have to come down and complete judgment on it, because it's totally out of control. So on that note, you know, I'm going to end it. I'm going to come back. I'm going to be doing more on, again, the keys and everything. I believe that as a virgin, getting oil in your lamp, and don't be limited. Let the Spirit lead you into all truth. So on that note, Yeshua is the Mashiach. I absolutely believe there is no other name under heaven where we may be saved. If you're at this channel, you're here because you're looking for deeper truths. You are saved. I don't need to feed you the milk. There's plenty who can do that. We're just going to keep going deeper and deeper into all this. So on that note, I'm going to say shalom.